and as it holds less political and social power, holding only about 20%. Modern perspective is estimated to hold fully half of the influence of wealth and power, and postmodern, 20%. Questions or comments before we go on? Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right to this gentleman. Oh.
That sort of mirrors the political divide as it's presented to us by the media.
It mirrors the political divide as you see it presented by the media.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like a teeter-totter.
We're missing 20%.
I knew somebody would notice that. We are. I'm glossing over some things here. What I'm glossing over is that these are the three voices that are dominant in the culture wars and in public policy debates and so on. But really there are other perspectives. Particularly there are some older perspectives, and there may even be newer emerging perspectives. The integral perspective itself may be another one emerging over here to the right of postmodern in response to postmodernism. Or it might just be a ripening of postmodernism. But the idea is that the other 20% lie in other perspectives. And actually we may talk about those later on. The hallmark of the culture wars is that each perspective seeks to impose itself on everyone. In all three perspectives, modernism basically is in charge politically, and so they are. The modern perspective dominates and does effectively impose modern perspectives on most of American public policy. Traditional and postmodern share in common that they're both criticizing and attacking the modern perspective, but from two different angles. The traditional perspective is demanding a return to traditional values, family values. Postmodern perspective is demanding greater care for the planet, greater inclusion of marginalized populations, marginalized people. Both are attacking modern. Traditional and postmodern, of course, don't get along at all. Traditional and postmodern don't wind up clashing quite so much in the culture wars. Now, I'm suggesting that we find truth in each perspective, and I'm pointing to the enduring values that each perspective has innovated as one possible kind of truth that we can find. But I'm also going to make the claim now that all three perspectives are infused with what I'm calling currents of love, which represents another way of finding truth in each of the perspectives. Here's what I mean by that. I'm talking about two currents of love. I'm calling one of them an ascending current and the other a descending current. One of them is more about striving. The other is more about embracing. One celebrates and seeks unity. The other celebrates diversity. One emphasizes perfecting the self. The other emphasizes perfecting society. One emphasizes wisdom. The other compassion. One emphasizes agency, autonomous action. The other emphasizes community, collaboration, collective action. One could be said to be deep, the other could be said to be broad. One might prefer to consolidate, and the other to proliferate. One might be described as reaching from earth to heaven. The other might be described as reaching from heaven to earth. Reaching up and reaching down. One reaching up, striving for nobility, for higher value. The other embracing the needy, embracing everybody. One might emphasize transcendence, and the other immanence. One might emphasize grace, the other karma. And if you're familiar with the Greek words, one really is eros, and the other is agape. If you think about political debates, for example, questions of what should public policy be regarding welfare, regarding services to those who are needy in one way or another, policies regarding unemployment. It's not hard to see both currents at work, both currents sort of powering or infusing perspectives in the debate. It's easy to lose track of what underlies those perspectives because the voices are so shrill, because the voices are so loud and trying to shout one another down and dominate. But I believe if you look carefully, you'll find at root some of these currents at work. Questions, comments at this point?
It seems to reflect the yin-yang.
Yin-yang, absolutely. The qualities on the left would more often be identified with classic masculine qualities. On the right would more often be identified with classic feminine qualities. And I don't mean gender here, I mean the qualities that can be present in persons of any gender, both feminine and masculine qualities. The qualities on the right tend to be more associated with postmodern perspectives, on the left more commonly associated with traditional perspectives. Does that match up with the way you see things? Other questions, comments at this point? All right, let's review. Integral theory, we've talked about two principles. Every perspective contains truth, and the world includes a multitude of perspectives. New perspectives build on older perspectives. Innovations and values emerge, and some of them endure indefinitely. Possibilities expand, both good and bad possibilities. The summary is that each new layer that's added, each new layer of meaning, tends to transcend but include older layers. Not replace, but include. And again, the suggestions from integral theory: find an element of truth in every perspective, gather the truths of many perspectives, and now I want to be sure and add, just for you, that we want to reject the excesses and pathologies of each perspective. Questions now, or comments? Okay. Now I want to switch back to education and talk about these same perspectives in education. In education, what I see is traditional, modern, and what I'm calling integral. And again, I'm not sure whether integral represents a new and separate perspective or whether it's simply a ripening of a postmodern perspective. But what I don't see in today's education world is a distinctly postmodern solution to the problems of education. Today's schools were designed about 150 years ago, 1830s or so, largely in New England, and emerged from an agrarian economy and addressed very traditional perspectives and also very modern perspectives. The Industrial Revolution was approaching. The world was being viewed as scientific and mechanical, and that largely entered into the design of today's schools. And that design, that basic design, remains in place today. Lockstep curriculum and so on remains in place today. What postmodern perspectives are found in schools today, in my view, are found in individual teachers and administrators, individual educators working within a system whose structure is basically traditional with some adaptation, some accommodations for modern. But first arose traditional education with its emphasis on facts. Primary method was telling, simply conveying knowledge. Let's pour knowledge into kids like they were vessels receiving water. Curriculum was static. It was intended that we can take all of human knowledge, divide it into a great taxonomy, and methodically teach it, convey it to children. Today that sounds silly. Student rights were really very minimal in traditional education, and the schoolmaster, think of a one-room schoolhouse, was basically the benevolent dictator. Modern education arose as sort of as a response, a new layer on top of traditional education. And I'm meaning to suggest the color